What's going on, Babylonians? It's me, Songs of Raids. I'm back with some more sync content to bring to the channel. Now, today's video, I'm actually going to be doing a very early build guide, something that I've been working on myself, and I have seen a lot of things being said in the meta in terms of like, this is the best build to go for, the deadly tortoise is pretty much the main go-to weapon of choice for pretty much every single build that currently stands out there. So what I wanted to do was offer you an alternative, one that is absolutely busted if you do manage to find the right mods in your run, and you can actually help this out with some of the mods that you can put in your loadout. So I want to run through everything to do with my current quotation marks melee build that this is all about, and I want to explain how it all kind of comes together, what you need to be able to look out for, and how you can maximize the amount of this that you could do out there in the Meridian and be able to take this into some elite runs. If you do enjoy this build guide, if you want to see more from ourselves, then make sure to drop that like and subscribe. I definitely do have a deadly tortoise build on the way for you, but I wanted to bring this one out first, so this one will be just a couple of days before that one comes out. But with all that said and done, what are we waiting for? Let's start diving into the guide. So with that being said, you can probably already see the runner that I'm about to suggest, but let's press the tab button, let's actually go through the loadout bit by bit and explain why the choices are made there. So let's have a quick talk about the runner. Now obviously you can tell from here that I do have Layla equipped. Layla is probably the ideal one to be able to go for, but obviously she is locked behind a certain type of paywall, so whether you have enough shillings or whether you have enough currency to be able to purchase her, whether you're doing all the events, I would recommend that you do get Layla for this build, but you don't necessarily need her. You definitely can go for something else, so in this case I would probably recommend either Glory to be able to get that increased nano weak point damage, or alternatively you can go for Dr. Stone as to being able to have that support. Dr. Stone just seems to be like a generic overall good one for you able to go for, you know, especially in those elite runs where revives are pretty much crucial and you kind of need the drone right there and then. But so you can go back and forth between these two, which they are unlocked as standard, but ideally you do want to go for Layla. Now Layla is ironically a little bit more selfish when it comes to it because of how her healing blade works. When melee kills restore your health, because of the gun that we are going to be using, the Guntech that we've got equipped on this build, every single kill that we are going to be doing is going to count as a melee kill, meaning that we're going to be restoring our health off every single nano kill that we do have, meaning that we don't need to worry about med kits, meaning we've got really good ways of having sustain in this fight, and overall it's a really good kit to be able to have. On top of that, we also have the runner skill of ghosting, where you make yourself invisible for a short time. You deal increased damage to nanos when using melee attacks to break invisibility. As far as I can tell, this doesn't apply to your gun, which we will discuss very shortly. That's the reason why I'm mentioning that. So it doesn't. I believe it is only applying to your actual melee attack. So if you are swinging your melee swords, so you just keep that in mind. If you do want the increased damage viability, which is kind of substantial, feel free to just use that. You do need to actually be within melee distance and start using your melee attack, so that is something there. The other thing that's really got ghosting going for it is the fact that it seems to have a very short cooldown, and the fact that that's really nice, it just kind of ties in really nice with the rest of the build that we are going for, increasing the amount of weak point damage with all that kind of thing. This can get enhanced even further if you do manage to find a cooldown reduction mod. That pretty much helps you out as well, so definitely keep an eye out for that, whether it's the one when you get hit it reduces your cooldown, or just the one that says standard when you have the affliction when the cooldown is off. That, and if you manage to get that to max rank, that also reduces your cooldown as well. It just means that you almost always have this active as well, which is really, really nice. So we've talked about the runners, obviously, with, you know, that pretty much covers the easy side of things. So let's start diving into the mods. So in terms of PvE Port 1, even though I do have the gold one, which you do get as standard for being able to complete, I believe it's the elite run, you don't need Second Wind. Second Wind is really, really nice, don't get me wrong, because armor recovery speed plus 40% is huge, but you can go for other things instead. You can use the normal Second Wind to be able to get it for 30%, so that's really nice for being able to have some sustain. It's really nice in elite runs, especially if you do get hit quite hard. You just have to run around for a couple of seconds and all of a sudden you've got your armor back. That's really, really nice. In terms of like other suggestions, if you do have armor ricochet is really, really nice to be able to have. It's just a really consistent way of being able to break Nano's armor, which is going to be the most stubborn way of being able to remove Nanos out of the field. And the other thing you can go for is going to be making lemonade. That's the other one I was talking about, where taking damage accelerates your skill cooldown. And this does have an internal cooldown of 5 seconds, but it does reduce your skill cooldown by 5% inherently, and then it reduces your cooldown every single time you get hit by 10%, which is kind of nice. You will be pretty much getting hit all the time in elite runs, so that's just kind of nice to have, and it means that you get your invisibility back faster. Moving into port 2, and this is where we're going to be increasing our damage just by standard, and this is going to be melee range. The reason why we need a purple rarity version of this is because the blue one just increases your attack range, but if you manage to get a purple one, this also increases your melee damage by 40%, and this is absolutely huge. The reason why this is going to be so good is going to be a little bit more apparent when we get to the Guntech, when we get to the sweeper, but ideally you need as many melee mods in this build as possible, because that is going to be a huge damage boost. Something that we haven't managed to see with any of the other mods that do slot into here. Obviously you do have things for like explosion damage and everything like that, which do work well with certain Guntechs, but in terms of melee bonuses, we get some really nice bonuses when it comes to the Codex, which we'll talk about very shortly, but also the melee mods as well, and that is just going to be just compounding, giving us some massive damage output as we go around the Meridian. If you can get lucky with the exchange mods as well, if you can go straight into melee every single time and prioritize those the most, then this will also help you out with this build. Port 3 is going to be an instant lock for Headhunter. Now, technically energy rounds is also a great choice as well. So if we do go have a look, I definitely have an energy rounds here. Energy round shock is probably going to be the better one, because this one, if you do stack this up, I believe this means that you get shock affliction, but also if you manage to get it maximized, so if you get it to the yellow tier, this also increases your charge speed, meaning you're getting an extra projectile sent out all the time. Energy round shock is a great choice, but ideally I think that going for Headhunter is going to be the better one. Being able to get a 45% weak point damage bonus just from being able to cast our abilities, and because our ability comes back ridiculously quick, we're able to stack this up relatively early on into a mission, meaning that we're getting a huge damage output increase right there. On top of that, this doesn't seem to decay. I think it does between levels, so if you do manage to like complete a level and then it takes you to the next section or something like that, I think you then do need to stack it back up again, but it's just pretty much a permanent 45% weak point damage boost every single time you activate your ability 3 times, and so overall I really enjoy what Headhunter is giving us, but like I said, you feel free to swap in an NG rounds if you need to. And then last of our mods is going to be Skill Thrill. I absolutely love how this one works. Being able to deal additional damage with our primary weapon after using our skill gives our gun damage a plus 40% increase, and this does have a duration of 20 seconds. The reason why we want to get our cooldown on our abilities back so quickly is because Skill Thrill can then almost have a permanent uptime, meaning that we're going to be having an extra 40%. So you can see how the damage multipliers kind of come in here. So obviously the first one in terms of our mods is going to be our sustain, but we're getting 40% melee damage from our port 2, we're getting 45% weak point damage from port 3, and then port 4 is going to give us an extra 40% as well. So overall this is just absolutely huge for the build. I highly recommend being able to put Skill Thrill in there. In terms of Nano Choice, when it comes to this build, I would probably recommend the Suppressor. Now, you could potentially go for a Crusher instead. Crusher would be actually quite good if you manage to get the mod that gives you the Taunt, which I think it's Morpheus Rage, it's one of the two. So if you manage to get that and you can get enemies to stay away from you, then that's going to be really kind of nice, that's going to be impactful for you. But the Suppressor has some nice bonuses, because not only does it have some massive DPS, not only does it have the energy ball that you can get from the mods, and you can upgrade that further so that you have unlimited ammo while that ball exists. Being able to have the Suppressor on your arm also means that you have tighter hip fire, which is going to be absolutely perfect for the sweeper because of how the firing pattern is when it comes to the sweeper. It kind of fires out in like a line, and it's not too close together, but once you have the Suppressor, you can start stretching that range out, and that means that we can start pinpointing like every single bullet so it's hitting the same location, meaning that all 3 bullets are going to be hitting the same weak point. Now, of course, we talked about everything, so why aren't we talking about the Guntech? Well, that's where we're going to come into the sweeper. This is going to be the DMR with the distant relative, being able to fire 3 bullets at once in a horizontal spread that deals melee damage. This is the reason why we're able to do so much damage, and the reason why we've instant locked melee range into our port 2, because that 40% melee damage is actually going to feed straight into the sweeper, increasing the amount of damage that this gun's going to be doing. So not only is it getting the modifiers from Skill Thrill for gun damage, not only are we getting the modifiers for the weak point damage, we're also getting that 40% also added into our gun damage, meaning that that 40% melee damage is really, really nice to be able to pair with the sweeper. Now, if you do manage to get the Guntech on this all the way around, because it is a blue rarity, it's relatively easy to get, and you can relatively easily, if you are spinning with the automatic, it's relatively simple to be able to get all 5. This does give you a run and melee damage of 80% while this gun is out, meaning that 80% is going to get put straight back into the gun, so that's an extra 80% right off the bat. And then obviously when you manage to go through all the gun chips, I haven't managed to get it just yet, but if you do manage to get it a little bit further, then you have range damage being thrown in there, even more melee damage, and even melee critical damage all the way up to 25% as well. So I think the sweeper is going to be an insane gun to be able to go out there, especially in these melee kind of focused builds, and that does mean that you can use this in a normal melee. If you do manage to get the breeze blades where you can fire it out with your gun, that is also going to be really nice and really compounding with this gun. And you can also get it so that you have the affliction blades, which sends out a shockwave, so you can, if you need to, if you run out of ammo, then you can always fall back on your melee weapons to be able to deal some damage as well. The last thing I do want to touch on is actually going to be the Codex. The reason why is because I want to show you as to how you're able to get so much damage out of this build. If you go into the runner section, because the companion is just going to purely be companion focused, you can see straight away on tier 1 right now we can have 2 points straight into Bone Breaker, which gives us a 20% run and melee damage, which is absolutely huge because all of a sudden that 20% gets thrown back into our gun, and it doesn't affect any other kind of gun that we're aware of. This is the only one that gets the melee damage bonus, so right off the bat, you know, just being able to put 2 upgrades into this runner mod is going to give us a 20% DPS boost. This is also going to get boosted up by the Opportunist perk as well, because we're going to be increasing the amount of weak point damage we're going to be doing by 15% at number 2. And then if you manage to progress a little bit further down the tree, so obviously this is going to be our sustain, just being able to stay a little bit in. Obviously we do have some critical chance that's going to help us out, but the one we want to go straight for after that is actually going to be Bone Breaker 2, which increases our run and melee damage by 20% per point that we do put in here, meaning we're going to get an extra 40% damage. Like, this is base as well. This is before we go into weak points, before we go into crits or anything like that. That is 40% increase to our base DPS, and not only that, that also means that we can go into Dominant Eye, because it is treated as a sniper rifle. We get even more weak point damage on top of that, with 2 points giving us an extra 20%. But my favourite part about this is that if you do manage to keep this build all the way to the end, if you do manage to complete your whole Codex, you can get things on this bottom tier, so tier 6. So like the long distance master, because this is a sniper rifle, this will be getting the bonuses from that sniper damage right there, which is huge. But it is also going to be double dipping and into another one, which is going to be the close range master, which is going to increase our melee weapon damage by 25% per point to put in there as well. So it's actually getting even more boost, and it's probably the main category that's going to get the most. So this build has sustain from Layla being able to heal herself for every single kill she has, and it also has the highest kind of potential to be able to maximize from the Codex in terms of the amount of damage that we are able to do with this build. Now if we show off how this weapon is able to perform in game, as you can see the normal kind of hip fire, you can see that it is 3 projectiles just like that. Now they are a bit slow in terms of like their traveling, so you do need to be able to factor in something like bullet velocity to be able to go onto a moving target, but overall you should be absolutely fine. It's because it fires 3 bullets at the same time, it shouldn't really be causing you too many issues, but you know, that is just still something to be aware of. In terms of like this, you can obviously crouch, which you can't do in the safe zone typically, but if you do crouch and you do aim over the shoulder like this, it does get even tighter, and it gets even tighter if you do manage to aim down sight altogether, but then obviously you're losing your mobility and everything like that, which you kind of do need in the PvE mode. Lastly, the mods that you specifically want to look out for when it comes to this build. If we're taking away all the generic ones, all the really good ones in terms of like the group damage and everything like that, and the ones that strip away armor, then you kind of definitely want to go into the melee focus build and melee focus category. So we want things like breeze bullets. Breeze bullets will give us an extra melee projectile on top of the damage that we're doing, which is also increasing melee damage, but it's also dealing melee damage as well from what I can tell. So we are getting an extra projectile that's going to give us a massive boost in damage, and we're also giving massive boost of damage onto our gun as well. We also have melee range, which obviously we can maximize to give us even more melee damage. So going from what we currently have in terms of mod 2 and going all the way and upgrading it all the way up to gold rarity will give us an extra 35% damage boost, which is quite nice. We have Sickening Strike, which will allow us to deal afflictions, and I do believe that the bullets will also deal afflictions as well, treating it as if it is a melee attack. So therefore you are able to do some affliction based builds with this as well. And it will also give you that, so if you do manage to run out of ammo, you can use the breeze blades from your swinging your melee weapon to be able to do damage as well. And then lastly, we also have up close and personal, which is going to give us melee attacks deal increased damage against primes and while restoring some of your health, so we get even more damage against primes, and we're also able to heal ourselves up without the need to be able to kill something in the first place just from taking on those primes. Now the last of the mods that I do want to briefly just mention, just because it really does help out in terms of your skill, is actually going to be Orbiter's skill, where it accelerates your skill cooldown when striking nanos, and this does stack up to 3 times. This one really helped me out in being able to get my invisibility back really fast, and it just kind of helps with skill thrill, which is going to help us out being able to always have that maximum kind of damage ramp up, that extra 40%, or even higher if you do manage to get that upgraded all the way up to gold. But anyway, that just pretty much wraps up the whole build breakdown. Like I said, you can go for your generic packages in terms of like being able to break armor, being able to go for ricochets, being able to do group damage and everything like that. It pairs really, really nicely with this build, and overall, I'm absolutely loving this. I do go back and forth between this and my Park Deadly Tortoise build, but I will explain that one in greater detail once I've managed to iron out a few of the kinks. But this one does get me through pretty much all the content I could possibly need, and it does go into elite runs just fine. I'll leave a few of the clips in the background just showing off what this build can actually do in terms of like damage numbers and just like a few other odd clips. But overall, that pretty much wraps it up on the build video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments section down below, what do you think of this build? Have you tried this out? And is there any other kind of builds that you want me to be able to see, want me to be able to create? It can be off a specific Guntech, it can be off a specific perk package. Just let me know all that down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. Massive thank you to the Babylonian family, as always, for their continued support. It really does help the channel out. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop that like and subscribe so you can find your way back for more sync content. With all that said and done, that just leaves me to say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.